There's a right way and a wrong way to look at the HEX ecosystem right now. I think one of the right ways to look at it is if you sacrifice for PulseChain, you are one of like 43,000 people, which is a unique group of people who are really sitting on, even though the price is down 40% or 50% from sack rate, from the base sack rate, you're still sitting in bull market price territory. It's like effectively, if you're holding PulseChain from the sacrifice, there is a subset of folks that is still living in bull market prices with the valuations of their crypto because they got hex value transferred out, stored virtually, and now they're sitting on these coins that have this tremendous value. And so I think in terms of price, we're just seeing the last bits of that last bull market still fizzling and fading out of the PulseChain ecosystem. And a lot of those guys, they actually took that economic energy back into HEX, which is why we've seen this huge rise and fall in the price of HEX when you compare it to PulseChain value. So like HEX has done 2 and 3x's in pulse terms over the last 3 to 6 months on more than one occasion. And that kind of gives you a perspective of how the market is equalizing or trying to find equilibrium in what fair value is, and really what we're experiencing right now is just this divestment out of what was once one asset into this basket of like 4 or 5 core assets. And so the proper way to look at this is, in terms of HEX, is, first of all, if you're holding on to the other ones, make sure that you haven't left out the hexes. And I'm not just speaking to just one, but to both of them. And we can get into that deeper as we go, like the nuance of EHEX and what its potential capabilities are for the ecosystem, and then PHEX and what its potential capabilities are further on in terms of like cheaper onboarding and things of that nature. We don't need new adoption to set the floor price and to go up in value. We just need some of the whales to get on the same page, and just to get that new interest into the ecosystem.
Well, how do we get people staking too? I think that's something that, as I talked about a couple of days, is like the best time. I mean, a lot of ways when the price is down so much, you can get so many more T-shares. I mean, maybe Nerd Girl can speak to this too, of just like, if green candles aren't the marketing message to bring people on, if we don't have those right now, how do we get people locking up, delaying gratification, getting more money coming in, getting locked up over the years, earning people yield without, right now it's like, why would I do that? Why do I have a reason, even though you can get so many more T-shares? That's the nerd stuff we know, but everyone else, do they need green candles? How do we get them staking more?
Well, what you can do is you can show people like the APY comparisons of like coming in now with a very small amount of economic energy in dollar terms, and to be able to get so many units of HEX. And then basically there's 2 ways to think of it. It's, you're really not competing with the T-share rate right now because the dollar value is so depressed. You're really just competing for units at this point in the cycle. So really what your goal should be, if you are fond of HEX, if you have a fondness for HEX, you should be absorbing as many units as possible within your risk tolerance. So because there's no guarantee that, as much as I don't want to admit this on a HEX stream, there's no guarantee that the floor prices are in until it's confirmed. But like I said, we need to see that confirmation in the data. And the only thing that's coming through right now is that the big heavy sellers in the ecosystem are starting to run out of units to sell. And the longer the price can stay below a penny on both of these, the longer it can stay down here, the more units can get redistributed at a faster pace than at higher prices. So we've just seen this unsustainable level of price action prior to middle of last year, where we were sitting in that 5-cent range and above, where it would take 10 times as much incoming energy to stop the sell-offs, whereas down here it's 90% less economic energy has to come in and absorb the units. So like 100,000 EHEX is like $50,000 right now, versus like at 5 cents it was $500,000. And so you can see how so many more units can get absorbed by the average guy who wants to bring in some gains from the last cycle, for example. Any thoughts on that particular angle of it? Just about the accumulation of units, and then the not necessarily need to do the staking now, but if you decide to stake now for way long and take a shot at a belief, not the best investment criteria. Like, you don't necessarily want to just dive in head first into something, buy a ton of it, and stake it long, and then be locked out of your funds for 10 or 15 years because there is no guarantees. But to strategically accumulate a meaningful size of units now and then proportion it out in the right allocation so that you can capitalize on the long-term success of it if it does become fruitful for you, or be capitalized on any short-term pumps, which is what we've seen over the last 2 years is swing traders just making a killing on these huge price swings on the HEX chart.
Yeah, I'll toss in there, girl. She's got anything
Sorry,
on that?
I'm reading the comments. I probably shouldn't be. I should stop reading the comments. We can't talk about the SEC case, guys, because nobody here is a lawyer and we don't know. Like, I will say this about the SEC case, though. Like, I wrote I write a column, and I once wrote a column that said I wouldn't want to be holding any token while an SEC investigation was going on. So, like, I mean, can we really expect major price momentum increase while the future of the assets classification is so uncertain? I don't think so.
So what's the solution there? Is it sort of we just kind of, I mean, do you think that's going to affect staking? You think people's long-term conviction in the product? What do you think we do while SEC waters are still getting tread?
I mean, I think, the people who are in. There's we already have a diehard community, right? But people are more providing liquidity and doing other things with their tokens than staking long term, because because now, after having been through it in the last cycle, they see the pitfalls of what happens when you're 100% staked. So let's say that the SEC case wraps up and then the price goes nuts. Nobody wants to be completely staked so that they can't take advantage of that price swing.
Yeah, I don't think completely staked, but speak for myself, I think I've made more stakes in the past 6 months or so than I've ever made before, just because you can get so many of them over different periods of time. Obviously not all 5, but ladder and certain things, techniques like that, I think is super beneficial when the price is so low. But yeah, of course, never wouldn't put my whole stack into staking out 5 or 10 years with all the, what you could call uncertainty. Although I think there's definitely pros and cons about being down so much, the case being around this time, whether it gets racked up in a few weeks or months or years, hard to say. But I don't know. It's hard for me to ignore the cheap T-shares. I'll say that.
I mean, I think that just takes a metered approach, a strategic one, and that's not to blindly believe that the best option is always to lock yourself out of your own capital. But at the same time, I think it would be ignorant to not put some percentage of if you're believing in this thing and you're accumulating a lot of it, to put some percentage of that out, to capitalize in that longer term yield. Because there's always there's optionality if you give yourself the options, right? So I think when it comes to RHMax saying he's staking a lot, it's not necessarily that he's saying he's staking it all max length. He's probably staking it in different laddered out approach that's strategic, and he probably has some form of short-term rolling stake that can be used to leverage the bull market. Anyone that's in this that really knows what's going on is, you need to be playing this from 3 or 4 different angles to be the most sophisticated and successful investor in HEX is possible. And so it's just very nuanced, and there's not just one way to play the game. And that deep game theory is part of what makes HEX so special. And people kind of have forgotten that.
Axel said it's a particular reason why, I have such strategies too, is because not trying to be a thousandaire, That's a particular reason why I try to deploy some of these strategies. Hopefully work out well in the end. Again, just EHEX, PX, whatever. Everyone's got their favorite flavor, but boy, I never thought seeing HEX at 20 cents, 50 cents, all this stuff from the fraction of a penny from a trading on Bybit for, sitting there looking at, is it going to go to 2 sats? Is it going to go 2 sats? Am I going to have to trade the Ethereum pair? It's only, it went to 3 sats. Oh my gosh, I went to 9 sats. Sitting through all that and looking at the cheap prices and just thinking back in those times, and then now seeing it, under a penny for EHEX, and combined HEX is just over a penny right now. I don't know. I never want to make the T-shares not enough mistake again. I'll say that.
Yeah, in terms of decentralization, we talked a little bit briefly about, what would be the ultimate best conclusion of the OA, and is there an outcome that eliminates the centralization concern versus, just like the obvious truth that generally the user supply is about 10 to at max 15% of the total supply, and that's what's being actually used and transferred and transacted with, is that 10 to 15%. I think we need to come to terms and grips with the reality that in general here we're looking at maybe 60 to 80 billion hex is really what we're working with as users of the system, and then the rest either needs to be for the most part discarded or thought of in a way of like you can never know exactly how it's going to play out. We could talk about some speculative things like perhaps like at some point in the future, the origin address that was getting talked about in the prior segment would take those coins and put them into the contract, and like they would be burned away, and then there would be nobody in the world that would be able to control that 85 to 90% of the supply. And like, what is the upsides and downsides of that move? The upsides is that from the outside looking in, there's no more central bank of hex. The downsides is that the guys that are in the majority holders of the supply right now that are users, there's like we'll call them the hex millionaire class. I've done this analysis with Crispy that shows that there's about 230 to 250 hex dollar millionaires left. The prices are so depressed that there's only 250 wallets that have $1 million of hex, either staked or liquid combined on both chains. So this is on the Ethereum chain. There's literally only like 68 of them left that have $1 million of hex, and on the Pulse chain, it's like 132 left wallets. And so you're looking at a combined like 230 guys that even have kind of like control of the user supply, so to speak, in terms of their portion of it versus everybody else. And that's like the downside of locking away those origin address coins into the contract is that player could never again control the interest rate of supplies to stop any predatory practices from that cabal group of hexagons potentially that are getting a majority of the inflation, which could potentially stifle the growth over the next few years. So
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I just wanted to like kind of rewind for anyone who wasn't here or maybe doesn't remember, but like the OA burning the coins would be really bad. When we look like when we look back at what happened with Big Payday, the origin address had to create some stakes at the last minute to prevent massive payouts to people who had stakes ending right after
the big payday.
I really should not be reading the comments.
Right after the big payday, yeah, he had staked before and after.
Yeah,
right?
so like that prevented massive payouts, which prevented the price from dumping even further. And there have been numerous times that the OA has acted in the best interest of Hex's price performance. So burning those tokens and giving 100% ownership to the community would mean, like, imagine if that had happened after Big Payday, when everything had dumped, and everything had dumped much more.
Yeah, and there's another instance of this too when the PulseChain and PulseX sacrifices went live. There was an incident that occurred where the OA sacrificed like 90% of all of the sacrifice funds. Also, this is the key, is he took, I should say not he, whoever that may be, received I think the number is 250 billion with a B. Hex was the total amount that's sitting in the PulseX SEC. So a portion of that 250 billion hex is actually hex user supply that got burnt away forever, given back to the OA so that it could not be dumped and further hurt the price of hex, since the top at 56 cents. So like had that not occurred, the price performance would have sucked even worse over the last 2.5 years. And now the only way that supply can come back to the users is through staking behavior. And so then really that at this point, it comes down to who's really going to believe. And this is like a test to see who's got the steel nuts to hang in there and put some stakes out that they're going to be the ones that's receiving these rewards in the event that this thing is successful over the next, 5 to 10 years.
Well, that's what I've been trying to spend a lot of time doing too, is I've got an onboarding playlist on the channel too, and just trying to help people figure out even how to buy the stuff. This is, how to hex, right? So with the decentralization, I created gorealdefi.com that a lot of people use. I use myself to just like, the average onboard person, They don't need to know what IPFS is. They don't need to download the wallet. They don't need to do, like, they just need to get HEX and decide what to do with it after that. So like, how do you guys onboard people? Like I'm struggling. I put out tweets and stuff like, what is the easiest way to buy PulseChain, buy HEX, all this stuff. I've tried to synthesize it down, really create content focused on that, because a lot of people, they click on stuff. Hey, they need to do 10 clicks. They need to do all this stuff. Why not just go to Coinbase and buy Cardano, buy like anything else? Like why would they buy HEX when, you know, there's all these hoops to jump through? How do we onboard people in 2024? Whoever wants to take it.
Yeah, so I've had friends recently who I like asked to watch the movie, you know, who I had asked people to watch The Highest of Stakes, and they're like, hey, I really want to buy some. I saw the price is really down, and like I can't figure out how to buy it from anywhere. So what I've been doing is, I mean, obviously they haven't been buying huge amounts, but I have been selling small amounts just personally to people just to make it easier for them. Like instead of trying to help someone, you know, like help someone who's not crypto native or someone who is only used to buying their tokens on Coinbase and has never had a, you know, self-custodial wallet, or I guess that's not even the term that we're using anymore, but who can keep up? I'm going to use that term just because it's easier to understand, right? Like I've helped people set up a Rabby wallet or that kind of thing so that they could hold the tokens on multiple chains. But as far as buying it, the best, easiest way to do that and not affect the price has been to just do personal sales, which is actually not legal, but you know, because it's money as a service.
Hard to scale too.
Yeah.
That's why I've been trying to think of ways other than sitting down with people. I tweeted the other day, you've got a neighbor who wants to buy crypto. You know, you're a Hexagon. You got 10 minutes. They got a laptop. You got 10 minutes. How do you do it? And I got a few answers, but a lot of them were just kind of like, you know, even on hex.com, even you go to the website /hex.com/buy. I mean, /scam is amazing. Like if you send anyone, if you type in search for hex scam, the second link that pops up, I wish it was first. The second is hex.com/scam. The truth about hex scam, all that stuff. It's excellent explanations. You could apply pretty much any other crypto too, but it just happens to fit for us. But hex.com/buy. It's still got like 4 steps there. And you know, once we get past MetaMask, that's where it should be frictionless. That's where the piece is to get them to not click away and not go, you know, buy something else. So that's what I think 2024, if we can solve that, if we can have more fiat onboards or anything that's the most frictionless possible, more just buy button, just buy HEX. Maybe even locked up. Maybe there's a button. I even suggested this before. If you're buying, like it'd be cool on hex.com or any other website where there's like this automated process where, okay, buy, and then by default, you're staked for, you know, some period of time. Like that would be, I think that would save so many people. Again, if you believe in the product and, you know, want to do it long-term and all that stuff too, and they could always opt out. But I think buy and stake automatically, just like Big Payday or just like the initial or the free claim in the old days, that would be a cool thing too.
But you know that's a lot of the reason for the early confusion about HEX was that people were like, oh, you have to lock it up. And you know what, it took a lot of us a lot of time to explain to people, actually, you have to lock up your free claim, but it's not like if you buy with your own funds, you get to choose whether you lock it or not and what time period you lock it if you do. So if you just like if you were to buy something and it was automatically staked, I wonder if that would contribute to more confusion about HEX and more FUD. Right? Like more misunderstanding of what the asset is and what the possibilities of it are.
That's definitely something that came up in the last cycle was people asking me like, well, I thought I had to lock it up. And it's like, no, you don't really have to lock it up. You can just ride the wave too, which is actually, it's probably appropriate for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
I wanted to say too that, I mean, Hex Scout is just launched and it is a tremendous onboarding tool. I mean, I think if you just send people to Hex Scout, that's going to pique their curiosity all on its own. And it kind of has this whole tutorial that explains, you know, kind of how we see things playing out. There's like if Hex performs well, it could even perform like Bitcoin did in the early days, and you can simulate staking behavior, and there's easy buy and stake buttons on there. There's warnings for the Hedron. If you go to end of stake, it'll tell you got Hedron waiting to be minted, and it'll do that for you as well. So it really holds your hand through the process. And this whole like familiarizing people with like a DeFi wallet, like a MetaMask wallet or a Rabby or one of these other ones, Internet Money wallet native to PulseChain. That's just like something that you show somebody if they really want to get in, they're gonna download that thing, and you just might have to help them through with it like once or twice. Maybe by 30 times they'll start to catch on, and again, green candles are the best marketing. So the cool part is that, once the green candles come is when you're going to get the most interest. We saw that last spring when the price ran up 700% in 3.5 months. And, people were banging down the door and people were doing 1,000 ETH market buys. And those times will come again. There's no doubt in my mind. It's just that we need to have in my opinion, what we need to see in terms of oddboarding that we can see a lot more. But in terms of whale movements, we need to see a cohort of whales come in and understand the game, and we shouldn't leave it up to like one or two smart whales to do this, but it'd be cool to see like an effort where these whales start to swim in the same pods and they start to set a floor price on the HEX. Well, why do I say HEX? Well, because it's got the least amount of liquidity and the most upside potential. And if we can control the HEX price with the low liquidity, let the price stay below, let's say half a penny or a penny for an extended period of time, let's say 6 months, and absorb a lot of that supply up. Remember, you can get 10 times the units here for the same dollar amount as you could up at like 5 to 10 cents just a year ago. So it really, if the longer we spend down here, the more units get redistributed back into this like smart floor place where we're going to set the floor. And then to like shoot the price up, it costs much less economic energy on the HEX side because there's really only like $500,000, $1 million worth of liquidity over there on any given day. In terms of HEX, there's probably like $500,000. And so to make the price 3x, you have to inject $1.5 million, right? So, but when you do that, let's say you triple the price of HEX, and this just happened back a few months ago where some whale came in, absorbed 400 million HEX, and shot the price up 3x. That virtually lends value to the Ethereum, to the PulseChain network. So then now you've got, let's say at the time there was $7 million on the floor. And then as he pushed the price up 3x, now there was $21 million that was bridged into PulseChain, which then could be used to purchase that HEX that's on PulseChain could then be used to purchase PulseChain and PulseX and then push up the valuations of that network. So really, I think it's important that the whales understand the game that needs to be played here and to leverage that low liquidity on the HEX side to be the driver of the ship, and then you can virtually lend that value to keep it hopefully circulating in the Pulse and PulseX ecosystem and start to build this circular loop of value. It's going to take a smart, metered approach, lots of units absorbed by good actors in the system over the next 3 to 6 months at these lows on the HEX price, and then as the sellers run out of ammo over there. They're able to virtually lend value to the PulseChain network by pushing the price up and then creating a floor price. If it starts with just a 2x, that's like, okay, you only have to have double the amount of ammo to flush out that next wave of sellers. And then you could do another 2x maybe 2 months later and then flush out that wave and just do this very, move the defense line forward one tranche and then let time do its piece, and then move it up one more tranche and then let time do its piece. And I think, for the smart folks that's in HEX, that it's up to the last 230 millionaires in HEX to really step up to the plate here and defend the prices of these things and show that you're in this for the long haul. Because if you don't do it, who's going to do it? Like somebody has to step up and do that. And so in terms of like little guys, know that these guys are going to come back in at some point and defend this and put in the recovery mode. And you want to have a piece of that action because it's like the ultimate, it's going to be the ultimate gratification is when you see that first, wild swing up 10x in price from the lows. It's like you won't get a second chance to buy down here and it could be a news event. It could be some sort of release, maybe an upgrade to PulseX. We don't know what the narrative is going to be when it comes, but take the opportunity now to buy it at these cheap prices, because at the very minimum, the prices are so depressed that you can still hedge any downside price action with the staking mechanic. And part of that it comes into different strategies, which we could get into that as well.
So I know people are talking about needing a centralized exchange listing, and we're not getting a centralized exchange listing for as long as assets are under investigation. Just saying that, like, I work in cryptocurrency, I negotiate centralized exchange listings every day. It's not going to happen until the case is settled.
There is a group that's actively working on getting us listed on centralized exchanges, and getting us proper listings on the large, public sphere.
Yep.
And that's all.
CoinMarketCap recently.
What's that?
CoinMarketCap recently with PulseChain HEX, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so I think that that's like, little wins, guys, little wins every day. Like this is really up to this, the holders to really step up to the plate and work hard to like, this wasn't just going to be an easy ride, but you think it was easy for Bitcoin to pick itself back up in the early days when nobody believed in it? It probably wasn't. It probably took a bunch of crazies to step in and do the hard work. Imagine Roger Ver at like a few pennies on a Bitcoin buying it and then like becoming Bitcoin Jesus over like a decade. Like, do you think that was easy to take all that ridicule and be the face of it? Like it wasn't just one man, of course. There's, the other names, but this is really where you earn it. Like the first cycle was a little easier because there wasn't as much overhead challenges. But those that can stick with this, persevere, and act positively is going to really take it to the win. It's not going to come easy, but it will be very, very fulfilling when we get there.
What can we do individually? We got hundreds, if not 1,000 people watching at this point. What can people do individually to, that's why I started streaming a couple years ago. It was like, I want to have more utility. Been watching forever, been around, following Richardson forever too. But it's like, what can I do to actually pump my own bags? How can I help the community? How can I give back? These type of things. This year, like I guess two parts of the question. First part, what would we get the most ROI for this year, 2024 for HEX? What would be the most ROI? And then what can people do individually to go out? Like, is it just sitting down with their neighbor, who may like Litecoin? They sit down and they just walk through how to get HEX and decide if they want to stake it or not with HEX Scout. Is it outbound market messaging? Is it signing the amicus brief for all this? What can people actually do to let them feel like they have a little bit more power and to be a little bit more involved instead of, just like looking at Twitter and retweeting stuff? All the likes and comments are great. But like, again, grassroots, we are extremely grassroots movement. Like, how do we get back to that in 2024?
People used to make a lot more like compelling content that wasn't just reiterating the same thing or like hex flexes. People used to make like intricate charts. People built all kinds of applications that could be used for tracking hex. And that kind of stopped. And I guess what would need to happen is just more people to feel like more people who have the talent and the skill set to create things that actually do add utility, that add awareness. But just like sitting with your neighbors and stuff, I feel like we all do that, but that doesn't really scale.
Yeah, I think going out and reaching new audiences. So, for example, like I got a stream coming up with Donovan Jolly from DIY Investing, who is a guy that I was watching in 2017, and he's been through the ringer. He's got like 56,000 YouTube subscribers, and he'll be like one of the first guys like going out and getting on an interview with like a Ben Cohen or like what we saw before with like Crypto Man Ran or Wolf of Wall Streets. These guys like getting out there in front of these different audiences is part of gaining different types of exposure. That's maybe something more that some of the figureheads could do better. And then in terms of just like everyday folks, like, you need to show people like what's the potential. And one way to do that is just simply pulling up like hexcalc.net and just sitting down with somebody and say, hey, if you put $1,000 into this and you stake it for 5 years, like you could, at a minimum, double your money if the price just stays flat. And then like it starts there, and then it gets into this conversation of if it goes down 90%, you can put another 1,000 in, and then just hedge the bet. Or if it goes up 10x in 5 years, then you're up 10x plus whatever the double the yield would be, right? So like just showing people like the mathematics of how the system works, it can get people interested in my experience, that it's when I have consultations come to me through my website, a lot of times they just want to know the tools better, like how to bridge, what does all these different levers and buttons do? Like there's a lot of people that want in, but they're not comfortable doing it on their own. And they just need somebody to help hold their hand so that they know how to get exposure like safely. Because they've all got fears of losing their money or getting hacked. And so if in my case, like what's been the most beneficial is just, spending the extra time with people to teach them the tools the right way the first time and show them the nuances, because this like the MetaMask and the different apps is all new technology. They're not always as fluid as we'd like to say they are. And so like just to know like the little nuances of like, okay, if gas is high, you might want to wait to transact, or when you go to do a transaction, you need to approve it first, which costs gas, and then you need to actually make the transaction, which costs gas. Because sometimes that it's like, what? I thought I just sent it, or oh wait, I thought I just provided liquidity, and then they walk away, and then it's like, oh no, you just approved. Because people's minds are ahead of here and now, so you need to slow them down and say, hey, step by step, this is how you got to do it. And if you give them a written down thing or a recording that they can go back to reference, that always helps too.
Well, especially since PulseChain launched, it's and Access may have a unique perspective on this, being a founder of a token as well. Like, how do we get people? How do you balance talking about HEX versus, there's the sea of other things on PulseChain. There's other ecosystems and stuff too, if you don't want to stay in PulseChain. But like, how do we get people motivated and just willing to talk about HEX more instead of promoting the other thing they think is going to go up or otherwise? Like, I guess, how do we help HEX in a sea of assets where the community has been in a lot of these good products and good assets and stuff, of course, too. But how do we get people motivated to be like, I want to onboard people to HEX. I want that to be their gateway into PulseChain. I want that to be the way that they earn income, or yield, the way that I have in the last few years. Like, how do we make that message striking again than it was like 2 years ago? 2 years ago it was easy. Yeah, everyone talks about HEX, but now it's like
2 years ago there was nothing else. So I mean, that's like build a time machine, maybe. I don't know.
Well, if we want to help HEX, right? Like if you want to help HEX, how do we get people or keep people excited about HEX in a sea of other stuff?
I think we're really reliant on, in this case, you're really reliant on the pot of whales to step up and to start making the price perform. Because if the price can start to perform and people are willing to put in the nut at the lows, that's going to bring everybody in behind it. So it's just like with Bitcoin mining, right? This is no different than Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin hash rate starts the equation. It starts to rise because there's an incentive. Just the same as people keep starting stakes every day. Every day I see 5 million hex stake, 10 million hex stake, 100 million hex stake for 30 days. Those guys aren't going away. They're making money every month, guys. Like, there's people making a lot of money in hex every single day. And it's just kind of blows over people's heads that that's the reality of the situation. So what we need to do is we need to remember that the incentive is already there. It's the inflation. And that the price depression isn't the inflation that's depressing the price of hex. It's the dilution into all these other assets. And so what's going to bring all that money home to roost is price performance. Like, once that price starts to perform, everybody that didn't get a lot of units at the lows is locked out. And now they have to buy higher. And why would they buy higher? Because the price performance is just so insane that they just can't not buy. Because it ends up becoming silly not to buy at that point. It's going to get to the point where, like, and this is me going out on a limb here, speculation and my opinion, of course, is that hex is going to get so absurdly priced at some point that you're going to look at it like on the same level as like Bitcoin or Ethereum. And the reason is because it's going to get backed by billionaires. That's why. Billionaires are going to be able to put up the funds to make this thing perform in price. It's going to take, I don't have all the answers of how that plays out, but because there's that much money already locked up in the system, and because there's such a legacy behind it, and that it was the first mover, it's going to perform. And it's just a matter of time. And I see new guys come out here like DGen Roundtable. They're like a really smart group of guys they're fun to watch. And we need more grassroots, a new wave of people to come in to get their units here at the lows and then be in this for the longer term. And we needed to have that flush out because so many people got rich so fast in the first like 2.5 years. And we're also, and that they needed to basically exit because it was just too much. Like, the gains were so maddening that they just couldn't even hang on to it, which is understandable. And so we're just, okay, back to the Bitcoin hash rate thing. Okay, Bitcoin hash rate goes up, price follows it to meet the demand of the new inflation. So HEX went through hyperinflation. When did Bitcoin price go up the most? It went up the most when Bitcoin was hyperinflating in the beginning. And then when did it have the biggest drawdowns? In the beginning, when there was the most hyperinflation. And that's because the big whales stepped in and created floor prices. And these things take time. But we had this unique event where you doubled the HEX supply overnight with the mainnet fork. Had we not done a PulseChain at all, we might have topped out at 10-cent EHEX, and we might have bottomed at 1-cent EHEX with a double bottom this last year. But because you had this dilution, this exponential rise in price to 56 cents, and then you have to swing back harder the other way too, and you doubled the supply, right? And so it's really just a rebalancing of the entire system, and it's going over everybody's head. It's just time needs to play its part in the thing that monetizes time, okay? So just hang in there and don't believe in it. Understand the mathematics of it. Allocate your position in a way that's smart and effective for you. Some people are gonna accumulate a bunch of units and they're just gonna sit on them liquid. Some people are gonna stake portions out. Some people are just gonna go long. There's so many ways to play the game, and it's just a matter of time. So let time do its thing.
I think, there's not one right way to HEX too. It's like, early days, people were saying everyone should 5555, and that got a lot of people wrecked. And so I think that instead of trying to say there's only one way, like this is the right way, if you don't do it this way, you're not a Hexican, or if you don't do it this way, you're not taking advantage of, everything that it has to do. But like realizing that everyone is in a different financial situation and can use the tools in front of them however they see fit is like, probably a more effective marketing technique than trying to tell everyone that they have to do it this way or they're wrong.
Well, I'm just thinking about without green candles, and we don't know when they're going to come back, but what in the meantime, I don't feel like the right answer is just to do nothing or just wait, or of course we're waiting, but like while we're waiting, again, trying to create content, a lot of the people out there just pushing out a lot of stuff, tweets, memes, all that stuff. There's got to be something that in the meantime that's going to give us some ROI that we're able to, like, just again, jet fuel when it does take off, that everything's in place. Everyone's searching for hashtags. They get all the information they need. People are, going to be probably more motivated to do stuff at that point too. They're going to have more money to throw parties, conferences, all these events and stuff too. But just in the meantime, I feel like there's got to be some things more ROI that we can do other than without the green candles. That's what I've really been trying to work on lately. Is like,
look,
the
things that have been the most successful for me in the past year and a half has been going out and meeting people in person. And this might be out of reach for some folks because some people just might be DCing every last penny into the ecosystem right now. And so they don't have extra funds to travel. But for those of us that have been here, that have done well with this, that we need to be going out and reaching people at different venues. Like Maddie was down at the Bitcoin conference last year talking about HEX and, and integrating with different communities, because there's a lot of money in cryptocurrency. That's just they're looking away from HEX. They're like looking at HEX like this. They're like not really. They're looking at it through the grapevine because they want it to die off and they want to ignore it. And so, that's just a matter of time until they start to capitulate in. But in the meantime, you can go out and my most successes come from going out and meeting other people that believe in a way forward. And I do believe there's a way forward. We live on a decentralized blockchain. We have redundancy on two separate blockchains, which is even more powerful because we have optionality. One of them has thicker liquidity, one has less thick liquidity, which gives us leverage over the different ways you can play the system. This is the prime spot to be in terms of opportunity. When you look at how the whole thing's set up, and just going out and networking in person with people, like I've met more amazing people by going out to these events than I had previously. Actually, that started with when I first met Nerd Girl. Some of the first people I met in Vegas, like El Hexadente, and he got me into the secret chamber down in the bottom of that where Nerd Girl and Whales Only and Maddie Allen, and
in the
that was
speakeasy.
In the speakeasy in Old Vegas, right? And that was my launching point, was getting out and meeting folks, and they've all done really well with this system. And so it's easy for us that have done well with it, understand it, and believe in it. Irregardless of any other concerns that people might have look from the outside looking in. There's a strong community here that's building. We have 179, 180 projects built on PulseChain to help support the core of it. And then on top of that, you have this this HEX thing that, you know, for lack of, like, for right now, people might have forgotten about it. But like, when you look at the actual metrics, like, it's hard to say that too, because there is a lot of transactions between there, and it's some of the thickest liquidity on the chains. And so there's just so much opportunity out there. You know, I urge everybody to go out and, you know, be a part of these live events, start conversations with new communities. Don't be a dickhead online.
Wait, are you saying that we should build bridges?
We should build bridges. We should, well, most definitely should build bridges. The reason is because, like, what else are we gonna? We could do it. We can do it on our own. We can repeat the 100x on our own as a community. But don't we all want to see the 1000x? To do that, we're gonna have to reach out to new communities and show them the opportunity here.
One thing I will say is, like, sometimes we have some more, you know, general crypto influencers who incorporate HEX and Pulse into their content, into their, like, you know, daily content or weekly content. And what they often see is, like, getting attacked for only covering HEX or Pulse for, you know, 1 minute. Recently, Wendy did that, right? She made a thing, and but then she covered, like she always does, a variety of topics, and HEX and Pulse were just one of them. But instead of people being glad that she spent a couple of minutes covering this ecosystem, people attacked her and felt like she should have spent the whole hour. But that's not how she does her content. So just being like, hey, I loved that you covered us for a couple of minutes, would love to see that more, that encourages people to do it again, instead of disincentivizing them because they got attacked.
Yeah. And with that, HEX is 4 years old. It's had 0 bugs. It's had multiple audits. The price has had great performance from the perspective of, you could have swung trade this asset for 2.5 years during the down periods and walked away with millions of dollars, literally. So yeah, it depends on their perspective and how you played this game, but there's been lots of opportunity in there. There's even more opportunity now than there was up top. You know, the tokenomics are solid. It's just time, guys. Like, I know people are running out of patience, and, like, there's one thing that I can't teach people, and that's patience. You did get into this get rich slow thing. So unfortunately, we thought it was fast, but it's only fast for like 6 months. So it's going to be really, really slow until you get that 6 month screamer, and then it's going to be really fast. So hang in there for that 6 months.
That makes it easier to talk to other communities too, when they say, because, like, even now doing cross collaboration, I mean, it's good when people talk about HEX and PulseChain that don't normally do. Like Nergirl mentioned, the general streamers and stuff. But giving them even more motivation, even outside of green candles, like even good news, even, you know, again, the coin market cap listings and stuff like that. I mean, I think that's what Wendy covered on the show, if I remember, recently as well. Giving people a reason to talk about it, even outside of green candles. And then when the green candles come, I covered that before. People were interested. Maybe they left a lot of good comments and got a lot of likes and a lot of views and stuff. Those are really critical, I think, too. And it's something to my point of, like, what can we be doing in 2024 until the green candles come? Boy, yeah, cross collaboration, getting other communities involved, building bridges. I'm gonna try not to walk too far over the bridge though, and not stay on the other side, but definitely meeting people in the middle, shaking hands. Hey, you got a good product? We got a good product.
Well, hey, that was always the thing about building bridges, is you don't have to go over it. It just allows people to come to you. You know, like, yes, you can cross it, right? But, like, the idea of creating the bridge is so that people feel like they can come, and they're not entering some super exclusive, you know, community where if they decide that they want to continue with what they were doing on the other side of the bridge, they no longer can do that, right? Like, I don't want people parachuting in with no way out.
Well, I think that's why staking is powerful too, just as a concept, because it kind of gives you the skin of the game over longer periods of time. So if you do cross the bridge and come over, instead of just forgetting about it for a while, like, maybe I'll pay attention to more HEX news. There's this new streamer. I'll still in my own other community, but also I'm paying more attention. I'm in the community. I'm interacting with people on the HEX side because I have a little bit more skin in the game. So I think staking as a general idea is a powerful concept. Stickiness, right? Rich talked about this speculative stickiness and otherwise. A lot of cool mental models there.
I love it. I think we got a lot of cool times ahead. I mean, people are pretty upset right now, but
Who?
they won't be. I mean,
I like
not
it.
us. We're good. But I'm
I'm
just
good.
saying
I
that
like
there's a cohort of folks that are online every day that are upset, and they need to go for a walk and
Touch
let
grass.
time do its part.
Watch some of these streams so we can give them the numbers instead of the charts. More numbers, less charts. How about that? More
I mean,
more
how
data.
bullish is that? If you think about it, yeah, you could look at, okay, let's say there's only like 230 millionaires in HEX right now. Well, where do you think that all those other millionaires went? They extracted. So maybe they're sitting on bags that could be brought back in once things get moving, but nobody wants to step their toe in first. And so all I'm saying is it's like a chain reaction. We've seen it before on HEX where somebody's going to do it first and then somebody else is going to follow. Because at the core of this whole thing is that everyone will be competing for that inflation, right? And it's just it's going to be a good future, I think, for the Hexicans. They might not be able to see it right now, but they will.
One thing that I want to say is, like, you've asked several times, what are some things that we can do? I would like to see less infighting in the community on social media, because I do think that negatively impacts the perception of, what a Hexican is and what Hex is about. So, like, if you're one of those people who's constantly picking fights with someone else, nobody's saying that everybody has to be friends with each other. Everybody has to agree with everything. Sometimes I don't like things that other people say, but instead of just throwing a fit or calling them out and yelling names, and I just keep scrolling, just keep scrolling.
Walks are good. Less Twitter, more walks.
Yeah, touching grass. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's I don't know when Maddie's going to come back, probably in a couple minutes, but I wanted to ask before we go to besides SEC, Richard beating down the SEC and that going away, or whatever good news could come from that, what is one piece of good news in 2024 for Hex that would just, you wake up on Twitter, you see it and you smile? What do you guys think about that? What would be one good news outside of the legal stuff? You'd be like,
The highest
today's gonna be a
stakes,
good day.
volume 2.
Ooh, the announcement, and then it comes 2 years later. Right?
An announcement of an announcement.
Yeah, docu-series, right? That'd be cool. I mean, shout out those guys. They made an
Here's
amazing
another one.
film.
Hedron and Icosa V2, which adds more value to Hex.
Ooh, you know what I would love to see? Someone, and I know Alex was talking to Steph about this on Twitter the other day, but someone actually taking over Staker so that, we still had Staker app. Like, handing over the code to someone else so that we still had that, like, easy to access mobile wallet. That would make me smile.
We got Hex Scout. I mean, the guys on at Staker are going to put up a web interface so that y'all are going to be okay. You'll be able to end your stakes, and it's going to solve.
Yeah, but my stake's bleeding now, man.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. That's probably a good point, you guys. If you're not, so for the future, don't stake on a centralized application. I know there's some people who did. Most people used it as a portfolio viewer. They didn't use it as a wallet, and rightfully so. But I don't want to throw shade on Staker because they invented the leagues, and we use leagues for everything now. Mm-hmm. So good job, Steph, for that. And now we have Hex Scout, which integrates your own personal custody wallet into their application in a beautifully designed interface. So just use Hex Scout for now, and then there's other competition coming online as well. So this is going to be a new arms race of who can get a majority of the Hex economy pie, and it's just starting to come out. But it's going to be it's as the price rises, it's going to cause even more competition for portions of your attention, and so expect that as things move along too. So make sure you're using secure and trusted applications as they come online that are vetted by like long-standing members of the community.
We need PLS Scout too. If I wake up one day and I see plsscout.com and it's got the same onboarding as Hex, it's got all the links, it's got oh my gosh, that would be
GoPulse is another great option. When it comes to swaps, like Internet Money Wallet, app.pitius.io, great DEX aggregator. I know the Power City guys have stuff that they built out, cross-chain swaps. So you can get Hex through a lot of different means. And if you need help understanding the tools, reach out to somebody who provides a service that you trust, that's public, not somebody that you just found out about, or, you know, if you got a friend that's been like someone that you know is doing well with crypto, but they're just unwilling to help you or won't make time for you, sometimes it's just better to just stop wasting time and go find somebody who will. You might have to pay them to do it, but at least you know that they're gonna care about you and help you.